Welcome back, everybody. Today, I will be diving into one of the biggest surprises Marvel has delivered in years. As you can see by the title of this podcast, the X Men are back, and somehow Marvel just remembered how to cook. Yes, fans, we will be discussing X Men 97 Season 2. Episodes 1 through 3 finally dropped, and you know what I gotta say about this? Hell yeah! Marvel Animation apparently walked into the writer's room, looked around, locked the door, threw away every play it safe memo, and simply said, "Let's traumatize everyone again." Mission accomplished. If you're expecting Saturday morning cartoon adventures, wrong show. If you're expecting superheroes solving problems in 22 minutes with a happy ending, yeah, you're also wrong. If you're expecting emotional damage, philosophical debates, incredible action sequences, moral ambiguity, and enough comic references to keep YouTube channels busy until Christmas, congratulations! You have found your mutant home. So, I'm going to break down episodes 1 through 3, and we're going to discuss today what worked, what didn't, the biggest surprises, comic book references, Easter eggs you may have missed, character arcs, and a few predictions for the rest of the season. And yes, we're going to ask the important question: how is this cartoon consistently better written than half of Marvel's live action projects? I mean, seriously. Marvel Studios has spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to convince us to care about multiversal variants. Meanwhile, these animated mutants walk into a room, exchange about 4 lines of dialogue, and suddenly I am questioning humanity. I basically do that all the time. That's called writing. So, let's dive into the deep end. Well, before season 2, let us remind ourselves where we left off. Season 1 didn't merely end, it detonated. Professor Xavier returned. Magneto became humanity's reluctant protector. Bason revealed his master plan. Prime Sentinels nearly wiped out mutant kind. Genosha became one of the most heartbreaking events Marvel has ever animated. Cable showed us multiple futures. Time itself became unstable. Half of the X Men were emotionally shattered, the other half were physically shattered. And Wolverine, well, being Wolverine means waking up every morning asking, "How many emotional scars am I collecting today?" Apparently, the answer is yes. Season 1 succeeded because it respected something many superhero projects forget: consequences matter. Every decision, well, it carries emotional weight. Nobody simply punches the villain and goes home. The damage lingers. Relationships change. Trust erodes. Heroes fail. And that's exactly where season 2 begins. Episode 1. Right away in episode 1, it tells us something important. This season isn't slowing down. There's no welcome back episode, no filler, no easing the audience into things. Within minutes, the tension is already escalating. The political landscape has become even more dangerous. Mutants remain feared, governments remain divided, old enemies haven't disappeared, they've adapted. One thing I love immediately: everyone feels older. Not physically, emotionally. Storm carries herself differently. Cyclops has become even more of a leader. Jean Grey continues wrestling with identity after everything involving Madeline. Rogue still carries the imaginal grief of Genosha. Every conversation feels heavier, and that's excellent storytelling. Okay, I have to give respect where respect is due, and I am no fan of this character. But Cyclops finally gets respected. So let's take a minute. No, let's take several minutes and get into it. So Cyclops has finally become cool. For decades, movies treated him like guy who removes glasses, Comic readers have spent years screaming, "No, he's actually incredible." Marvel Animation apparently heard them. Scott Summers is calm, strategic, confident, authoritative. He's making difficult choices, and he isn't trying to imitate Wolverine. He isn't trying to imitate Professor X. He's becoming his own leader. And that's exactly who Cyclops has always been in the comics. Leadership isn't yelling, leadership is making impossible choices while everybody criticizes you. Scott has become that character, finally. So let's talk about Rogue. If there were an MVP award for emotional acting, Rogue wins it. Again, every scene reminds us she's still carrying Genosha with her. She's angry, she's grieving, she's exhausted. She's trying to continue fighting while questioning whether fighting even matters anymore. That's real trauma. Not Hollywood trauma where someone cries for 30 seconds before making a joke. Actual trauma. And the performance reflects that beautifully. Storm continues to be amazing, and she has evolved into something fascinating. She's no longer simply the weather mutant, she's become the spiritual center of the team. Every time she speaks, people listen because she isn't trying to dominate conversations. She understands leadership through wisdom rather than authority. Honestly, she might could give some current day leaders some tips. Storm may quietly be the best written character in the series. Every episode gives her dignity, power, compassion, strength. That's exactly how she should be portrayed. Wolverine being Wolverine, well, we all know Logan continues proving two things. First, he is one of Marvel's greatest characters. Second, therapy would save this man thousands of dollars in property damage. Every conflict inside of Logan feels earned. He doesn't merely rage because that's what Wolverine does. He rages because loss keeps finding him. Every friendship comes with pain. Every relationship ends in heartbreak. Every mission costs someone something. Eventually, even the toughest mutant, he gets tired. And that's what makes Wolverine compelling. Not the claws, not the healing factor, the humanity underneath both. Well, let's talk about how this animation somehow looks better. Because just wow, wow. The lighting, the action choreography, the facial expressions, the camera movement, the environments. This isn't nostalgia anymore. This is prestige animation. Action scenes aren't simply flashy, they're readable. Every punch has weight, every explosion serves the story, every power feels unique. You never confuse Nightcrawler's teleportation with Blink style portals. You never mistake Cyclops' optic blast for generic laser beams. Every mutant fights differently, and that attention to detail matters. All right, let's talk about some humor, because I love humor. And one thing that X Men 97 understands, humor works because characters are funny, not because every dramatic moment gets interrupted by a joke. Imagine that. Revolutionary concept. Marvel, please write that down somewhere. The lighter moments happen naturally, they're earned. Nobody stops in the middle of an emotional confession just to reference pop culture. Instead, humor grows out of personalities. So that's why it lands in this show. All right, episode 1. If I had one criticism, it's that the episode assumes you've done your homework. This isn't beginner friendly. Miss season 1? You're going to spend 20 minutes asking, wait, who's that? Why is everyone crying? Did I accidentally skip some episodes? But honestly, that's also part of its strength. The writers respect the audience. They're telling one long story instead of resetting everything every week. For me, episode 1, I'll give you a 9.5 out of 10. You had fantastic pacing, excellent character work, beautiful animation, and enough mysteries to keep everyone theorizing until next week's episode. Well, we are going to transition into episode 2. And episode 2 raises the stakes even higher, introduces shocking new developments, expands the season's central conflict, and delivers one of the strongest action sequences in the series so far. So, let's talk about why episode 2, well, might be the moment season 2 truly shifts into another gear. So, episode 1, well, it was your warning shot. Episode 2, well, it's the cannonball that just flew through your living room. One thing I absolutely love about this season is that it refuses to waste time. Every scene either develops a character, advances the story, or raises the stakes. There isn't a single moment that feels like filler. Yay! That's becoming increasingly rare in superhero television. Instead of asking, how can we stretch this story into 10 episodes? These writers seem to ask, how much incredible storytelling can we squeeze into 25 minutes? The answer? Well, apparently a lot. So, the team is fracturing. And one of the strongest themes of episode 2 is trust, or rather, the complete lack of it. The X-Men, well, have always been a family. A dysfunctional family, but yet still a family. The kind of family that argues during Thanksgiving dinner, someone flips the table, Wolverine storms out, and Professor X tries to hold a therapy session while Beast quietly cleans up the mess. But they're still family. This episode asks a difficult question. What happens when that family starts questioning one another? Everyone has experienced loss, everyone is carrying guilt, everyone believes they're doing what's best. The problem? Well, their definition of what best no longer matches. That creates conflict that feels real, not manufactured. Nobody is acting out of character, they're acting out of pain. And that is a huge difference. We see Cyclops continues his evolution. So I'm going to give Scott another round of applause, which I do not do often because I am not a Cyclops fan, but because this season he is finally showing why he's been the field leader for decades. Leadership isn't about having all the answers, it's about making decisions when every option is terrible. Scott has to weigh impossible choices. Do you protect your team? Protect innocent civilians? Prevent another catastrophe? Preserve Professor X's dream? Every decision costs something, and you can see that weight on his face. He's becoming less of a soldier and more of a commander. That's one of the biggest improvements over many earlier adaptations of X-Men. Beast gets time to shine. So, let us appreciate the blue, furry Beast. Far too often, he's just reduced to the smart blue guy. Well, not here. He's the team's conscience, the scientist, the philosopher, the man trying to hold civilization together with reason while everyone else is preparing to throw punches. Basically sounds like history. His dialogue is thoughtful without sounding pretentious. He reminds us that intelligence isn't simply knowing facts, it's understanding people. Every team needs someone asking, should we do this? Instead of, can we do this? That's Beast. Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler steals every scene. Every time he appears on the screen, I smile. He's hopeful without being naive, funny without being obnoxious, faithful without judging others. And when the action begins, well, good luck looking anywhere else. Nightcrawler remains one of Marvel's coolest visual characters. Teleport, sword, flip, teleport again, repeat. His fight choreography looks like someone mixed ballet with parkour. Every action sequence involving Nightcrawler, it's just pure entertainment. The villains in X-Men feel dangerous. One criticism I've had of several Marvel projects over the last few years is that too many villains feel temporary. They're obstacles, not real threats. Well, episode 2 reminds us what a dangerous antagonist looks like. The enemy isn't trying to win a fist fight, they're trying to reshape society. That's terrifying. Physical battles eventually end, ideological wars, they never end. That's why these conflicts feel larger than life. The action sequences everybody will be talking about, well, without spoiling every single beat, there is one extended battle sequence in episode 2 that absolutely deserves recognition. And no, it's not because it's loud, not because buildings explode, but because every character contributes differently. Cyclops commands, Storm controls the battlefield, Rogue becomes the unstoppable force, Nightcrawler creates openings, Beast improvises, Wolverine charges directly into danger because, well, he's Wolverine. Nobody feels redundant. That's excellent team storytelling. The X-Men work best when they complement one another rather than compete for the spotlight. Now here's what impressed me the most. The emotional core of the episode. The biggest moments aren't the explosions, they're the conversations afterward. Characters sit with failure. Victory doesn't erase the grief. Saving lives doesn't magically heal emotional wounds. The writers trust the silence. Sometimes a look says a lot more than a speech. Sometimes a quiet conversation hurts more than an action scene. But that is mature storytelling. So, if you're a longtime comic reader, episode 2 is packed with little rewards. So, we're going to discuss some Easter eggs and comic references, background details, dialogue callbacks, character mannerisms, visual nods to classic storylines. None of them interrupted this episode. They were there for fans paying attention, and that's how Easter eggs should work. They rewarded dedicated viewers without confusing the newcomers. So, Marvel Animation is setting the standard, and this is something I never thought I'd say a few years ago. Marvel Animation currently feels more confident than Marvel's live action division. The storytelling is focused, the characters feel consistent, the emotion beats land, and nobody seems afraid to let scenes breathe. Yay! It's refreshing. Hopefully, some of that creative confidence spreads across the rest of Marvel. While episode 1 was outstanding, episode 2 somehow raises the bar. The pacing became stronger, the emotional conflicts deepened, the action improved, the performance remained exceptional. So, episode 2 gets a 9.8 out of 10. And that's about as high as I can go without handing out perfect scores like participation trophies. Now, episode 3 walks you into the room, politely asks you if you're emotionally prepared, and then completely ignores your answer. So, let's dive into the strong episode of the season so far. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're only 3 episodes into the season, and somehow it already feels like we've experienced an entire movie trilogy. Episode 3 is where the writers stop setting the table. Dinner is officially served. And it's spicy, if you're into spicy foods. This episode shifts from asking, can the X-Men recover, to a far more unsettling question. Can Xavier's dream survive what's coming? That distinction does matter. The X-Men have always fought villains, but their greatest battle has never been against Sentinels, Magneto, Apocalypse, or any other superpowered threat. It's always been against fear. Fear of people who are different, fear of change, fear of losing control. And episode 3, it leans into that theme beautifully. One thing this series understands better than almost any superhero show is that the world doesn't stop spinning between episodes. Well, the world is changing again. The consequences of earlier events continue to ripple outward. Governments react, the media reacts, ordinary citizens react, mutants react, friends become suspicious, former enemies become uneasy allies. Every decision creates another wave of consequences. That makes the world feel alive. Far too many superhero stories act like cities magically reset overnight. Well, not for the X-Men. Their actions, they leave scars. So Storm continues to be the moral compass. So let's just admit something. She has become quietly one of Marvel's best written characters. Every scene she appears in carries weight. She doesn't dominate the conversation, she elevates it. When emotions begin boiling over, Storm offers perspective rather than panic. That's leadership. It's not always about barking orders, sometimes it's about helping everyone remember what they're fighting for. Her quiet confidence balances Wolverine's aggression, Cyclops' tactical thinking, and Rhodes' righteous anger. Without her, the X-Men would feel incomplete. Rhodes' anger, well, it's earned. And this episode gives her some incredibly powerful material. She is still grieving. She is still furious. She's still searching for justice. The writers wisely avoid turning her into an unstoppable rage machine. Instead, they show someone struggling to keep their pain from defining every decision. That's a much more interesting character because grief isn't linear. Some days you're okay, some days a single memory might break you. And episode 3 captures that beautifully. AKA, if you didn't know, Gambit, he's still dead. Wolverine, he's just more than a guy with claws. And we need to retire the idea that Wolverine is only popular because of his claws. This season completely destroys that argument. Logan's strength isn't his healing factor, it's his vulnerability. He's seen more war than almost anyone. He's buried more friends than he can count, and he carries enough emotional baggage to fill an airport terminal. Yet he keeps showing up, he keeps fighting, not because he enjoys violence, because he believes some people, well, they're worth protecting. That is heroism. Cyclops becomes the leader. Now, I know I'm sounding like the president of the Cyclops fan club, which is difficult because I don't like him. But at this moment, I don't care because Scott Summers has earned every bit of praise. This episode highlights something fans of the comics have known for decades. Leadership isn't about being the strongest, it's about staying calm when everyone else is falling apart. Scott, he isn't perfect, he doubts himself, he questions his decisions, but he never stops leading. That's incredibly compelling. One thing I appreciate is that no one feels like background decorations. Beast contributes, Jubilee contributes, Nightcrawler contributes, Morph contributes. Even when someone only gets a handful of scenes, those scenes matter. That's difficult to accomplish in an ensemble cast like this. Too many superhero shows accidentally become the main character and their helpful friends. Avengers, I'm looking at you. Not the X-Men. This feels like a team. Well, I need to applaud the animators because they continue to raise the bar. Again, every episode somehow looks even better than the last. The lighting during quieter conversations creates mood. The action scenes remain incredibly easy to follow. Power effects have distinct visual identities. Facial expressions communicate emotion without requiring any dialogue. It's amazing what happens when animators are trusted to tell a story instead of just creating spectacle. Let's talk about the musical score. Everyone loves the iconic X Men theme, rightfully so, but the new orchestral material deserves recognition. The quieter moments are emotionally rich, the action cues never overwhelm the dialogue. The music knows when to step forward, and more importantly, when to step back. That's excellent composition. Why does this series work? Well, I've been asking myself why this show feels so different from many recent superhero projects, and I think I figured it out. The writers understand something fundamental. The powers are not the story, the people are. Cyclops' optic blast aren't interesting. Cyclops trying to lead a fractured family? Interesting. Storm controlling lightning? Eh, isn't is it that interesting? Storm inspiring hope? Very interesting. Wolverine's claws aren't compelling. Logan learning to trust people again? That's compelling. That's why this show succeeds. The powers support the characters. The characters don't exist to show off the powers. So let's talk about some predictions for the rest of the season. The first 3 episodes in, and here are some predictions. First, the ideological divide between Xavier's dream and more militant approaches is only going to grow. Second, expect the relationships with the team to be tested in ways we haven't seen before. Third, the villains are thinking several moves ahead. The X-Men aren't simply reacting to isolated attacks. They're confronting a larger strategy. And lastly, I don't think we've seen the emotional peak of the season yet. If these first 3 episodes are the setup, Marvel Animation is building towards something enormous. So, my final thoughts on episode 3. Episode 3 doesn't just maintain the quality established by the first 2 episodes, it strengthens it. The pacing remains excellent, the character work is still outstanding, the emotional beats hit hard, the action serves the story instead of replacing it. And for me, this is another 9.8 out of 10. 3 episodes, 3 outstanding entries. That's a remarkable start to the season. So, now that I've reviewed each episode individually, what do these 3 episodes tell us about the bigger picture? Why is this version of the X-Men resonating so strongly with longtime comic readers and newcomers alike? And where does season 2 go from here? Well, I'm going to wrap everything up with an overall review, biggest surprises, comic book connections, and bold predictions for the rest of the season. So, 3 episodes into season 2. What's the verdict? Simple. Marvel Animation is absolutely on fire. When people talk about superhero fatigue, I don't think they're actually tired of superheroes. I think they're just tired of lazy storytelling. They're tired of movies and shows that spend more time setting up the next project than telling a complete story. They're tired of characters making dumb decisions because the plot needs them to. They're tired of emotionally moments being interrupted by jokes every 30 seconds. And then along comes X-Men 97. It reminds everyone what superhero storytelling can be. The biggest strength, the character before the spectacle. The biggest reason the first 3 episodes work so well is that the writers understand one simple rule. The action means nothing if we don't care about the people involved. Every fight scene matters because the characters matter. When Cyclops gives an order, you understand the pressure he's under. When Rogue loses her temper, you understand why. When Storm speaks, you listen because she has earned your respect. When Wolverine charges into danger, it isn't because the writers need a cool action shot, it's because that's exactly who Logan is. That's good character writing. One of my favorite things about these episodes is that nobody feels like they're stealing the spotlight. The team finally feels like a team. Let's think about older superhero adaptations. Sometimes one hero becomes the main character, and everyone else is just there to clap. Yay! Well, not here. Everyone contributes, everyone has strengths, everyone has flaws, everyone has moments to shine. That's the beauty of the X Men. They're not Earth's mightiest heroes, they're a family. A messy, dysfunctional, emotionally damaged family. But a family nonetheless. Now, here's something that has always made the X Men feel special. The themes feel more relevant than ever. Yes, there are giant robots. Yes, there are world ending villains. Yes, there are incredible superpowers. But beneath all of that, the X Men have always been about prejudice, fear, identity, belonging, acceptance. Those themes remain just as relevant today as they were when the comics first introduced them. This series doesn't preach, it doesn't lecture, it simply presents difficult questions and trusts the audiences to think about them. That is mature storytelling. Well, let's talk about some MVPs. So, through 3 episodes, if I had to choose one standout character, I have to give the award to Cyclops, which breaks my heart. But Scott Summers has spent decades being underestimated outside the comics. This series finally lets him be the leader fans have always known he could be. He's calm, strategic, compassionate, conflicted, determined. He becomes one of the most compelling characters in the entire Marvel Universe. Close behind, Storm, because every scene she's in somehow becomes more meaningful. We do have some unsung heroes. So, I'm going to throw some love out to the supporting cast. Beast continues proving that intelligence is a superpower. Nightcrawler remains endlessly charismatic. Jubilee keeps bringing optimism without feeling childish. Morph provides levity while still contributing emotionally. Professor X continues wrestling with impossible moral choices. Even characters with limited screen time leave an impression. That's an impressive ensemble of writing. So, what could be better? As we know, no show is perfect, and everyone has room to improve. If I had one criticism, I'd like to just spend a little more time with the villains' perspectives. Great villains don't see themselves as villains, they see themselves as the hero. The more we understand their motivations, the stronger the conflict becomes. That said, we're only 3 episodes into the season, and there's still plenty of time to explore these ideas. Well, predictions. It's time to put my reputation on the line, right? Well, here are my predictions for the rest of season 2. I think the ideological divide within Mutantkind will become just as dangerous as the external threats. I think we'll see some alliances nobody expected. I think at least one major character is going to have to make a heartbreaking sacrifice. I think Apocalypse's influence will continue to reshape the entire direction of the season. And I absolutely refuse to believe the writers are finished emotionally devastating us. So, if season 1 taught us anything, nobody is emotionally safe. So, I gave you my scores one by one. Just to review, episode 1, 9.5. Episode 2 and 3 were a 9.8. So, overall, all 3 episodes combined deserve a 9.7. Now, that's some elite television. Not elite animation, elite television. Period. My final verdict, if you're a longtime X-Men fan, watch it. If you've never picked up a comic, watch it. If you've been disappointed by recent superhero projects, definitely watch it. This series understands its characters, it respects its audience, it trusts emotion over spectacle, and it proves that great storytelling, it never goes out of style. Honestly, if Marvel's live action division is looking for inspiration, they should simply walk down the hall and ask the animation team, "How are you doing this?" Because whatever they're eating in the writer's room, I'd like to order some for the rest of Marvel. Send me the bill. And in closing, that's going to do it for today's show. Let me know what you think of episodes 1 through 3. Who do you think is your MVP so far? Is Cyclops finally getting the respect he deserves? Do you think Apocalypse is the biggest threat? Or is there someone even more dangerous waiting in the wings? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I will try to read as many as I can. And if there's any good ones, you might be featured in a future episode. So, if you enjoyed the review, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming breakdowns of the rest of X-Men Season 2. Oh, also, I do cover wrestling, so if you want to hear my takes on wrestling, go follow the Weekly Steel Chair on YouTube, where every Sunday you can hear me on the Lipsticks and Lariats podcast with my wonderful co-host, Nikki. She is awesome. And just for fun, I will also be dropping a video, a podcast, on the new movie called Young Washington for all those historians out there, since it is the 250th anniversary of this great country I live in called America. So until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, whether you're an Omega level mutant or just someone trying to survive Monday morning, keep fighting for a better future, because as the X-Men have reminding us for decades, hope, well, that is your superpower too.